This woman was calm, quiet, but secretly planning something chilling. She cut her long hair short and carefully packed the strands into a small bag. Then she changed her hair and eyebrows with dark dye. She made herself look tired and sick, pretending to be a chain smoker. Next, she cleaned the entire bathroom, scrubbing every corner with disinfectant to erase any trace of her real scent. But why go through all this effort? The answer was shocking. She was planning to frame her own husband. Her name was Amy, and she had once fallen deeply in love with a man named Nick. At first, she was drawn to his humour and charm, but after they got married, his true nature was revealed. He spent all day playing online games and threw money around carelessly. Hoping to bring him back to reality, Amy suggested having a child, but instead of listening, he angrily threw her to the ground and stormed out of the house. That moment shattered her heart, and something inside her changed. She started planning her revenge. When her husband went out drinking, Amy acted quickly. She drew of her own blood. Some of it she splashed onto a cupboard, and the rest she poured onto the floor. Then she dragged her hands across it to make it look like someone had been pulled away. She carefully wiped the blood off the floor with toilet paper, but made sure to smear blood all over a hammer, which she then hid inside the fireplace. Her plan was almost complete. Meanwhile, Nick was relaxing at the bar when he got a strange phone call from a neighbour. His wife had disappeared. Confused and nervous, he rushed home. What he found shocked him. The coffee table was broken. Blood was in the house. Panic hit him, but before he could react, police sirens roared outside. The police arrived and began searching the house. It didn't take long before they noticed blood on the cupboard. Signs of a struggle were clear. They collected Nick's fingerprints and DNA. The investigation had begun. Nick told them everything. He said he met Amy 5 years ago. She was beautiful, intelligent, and held a PhD in psychology. She was also a successful screenwriter. But after marriage, she quit her job and became a housewife. Her life seemed quiet, too quiet for anyone to expect something dark. To protect the evidence, the police sealed off their house. With nowhere else to go, Nick moved in with his sister. Later that night, something unexpected happened. As police returned to the house to continue the investigation, a pregnant woman suddenly appeared. She claimed to be Amy's best friend and begged for news about her. As soon as Nick walked into the bedroom, he noticed something strange, a clue that his wife Amy had clearly left behind. Not long after, the police brought him in again. He was still the main suspect. But when they showed him the envelope from his wife, he stayed calm. He explained it was just a little game between them. Every time there was a special day, Amy would hide clues, and he would follow them to find a surprise. It was their way of keeping the romance alive. Following the clue's message, Nick took the detective to his office, and just like that, they found the second clue on his desk. But before he could even solve it, the detective spotted something odd, a pair of lacy underwear. Jokingly, he called Nick a playboy and sealed it in an evidence bag. This clue pointed to a place called the Brown Cabin. Nick shrugged, saying he had no idea where that was. But that night, he secretly entered an old house. On the table, he found another envelope, the third clue. Just as he was about to open it, the detective showed up behind him. Nick quickly hid it and said he was only here to check on his father's house. The walls were blue, so the detective didn't think it was the Brown Cabin. But what no one realised was that Nick's father was named Brown, so in a way, this was the Brown Cabin. Inside the clue it said something strange: punishment, wood and candy. Nick tried to make sense of it, but nothing clicked. To him, it still felt like a playful treasure hunt between husband and wife. The next morning, Amy's parents arrived. They held a press conference to get help finding their daughter. Reporters gathered. Nick stood up to speak. He gave a short, polite summary of what was going on, but when the cameras flashed, he suddenly smiled. That one smile, so out of place, made him the focus of media attacks. After the press event, he acted like nothing was wrong, even greeting people with a happy face, as if his wife wasn't missing at all. The crowd didn't like it. Their doubts about him grew stronger. Later, the detective brought up Amy's best friend, but Nick seemed clueless. He said he didn't remember her at all. At the rescue gathering, he stayed calm, saying things that felt too casual, too distant. Suddenly, a woman stood up and said something shocking. Everyone gasped. The insults got louder. Nick was stunned and had to be rushed into a car by police. The detective came running and asked if he knew his wife was pregnant. Nick said the woman was crazy, that he didn't even know her. But then the detective pulled out a bunch of photos. They showed Amy with that same woman. In every photo they looked close, just like real best friends. Far beyond what Nick could afford, the most incriminating evidence was Amy's expensive life insurance. Nick was the sole beneficiary. Recently, the coverage amount had even been suddenly increased. That's when Nick remembered. It was his wife who tricked him into signing the policy while he was distracted. Before he could explain, the detective received another call from the hospital. To clear his name, Nick had to reveal a third clue. After thinking hard all night, he finally remembered the little wooden shed where Candy was kept. When he opened the tiny door of the shed, he was completely stunned. Inside were all the luxury items from the credit card bill, hidden by his wife. If the police found them, he'd be beyond saving. He quickly called his sister, and together they realised Amy had planned everything from the start. To frame Nick, Amy had meticulously plotted each step. She deliberately got close to a pregnant neighbour and pretended to be her best friend, claiming she was a victim of domestic violence to gain the woman's sympathy. After the neighbour used it, Amy collected her urine. That way, when she sent it for testing, she could fake her own pregnancy report. While he was distracted, she tricked him into signing the huge insurance policy. But that wasn't enough for her. She also faked 2 years of diary entries filled with descriptions of abuse and despair. Then she partially burned the diary so it looked like someone had tried to destroy it while keeping the writing legible as evidence. After planting enough evidence, Amy bought a black market car through some thugs and completely changed her appearance. She rented a place in a remote town and pretended to be a domestic abuse victim again, easily gaining sympathy from her new neighbour. They got along well, until something unexpected happened. One day while playing ball with her new neighbour, a thick bag of cash accidentally fell out. Amy quickly tried to hide it, but the woman noticed. The next morning, the woman and a strong man stormed into her room. They saw her freshly dyed hair and the new bruises on her face, realising she was clearly hiding from someone and wouldn't dare call the police. Without mercy, they took all her money. With nowhere else to turn, Amy called her ex-boyfriend. When he saw that she was still alive, her ex-boyfriend was shocked, but Amy's lies didn't stop there. She begged him not to call the police, and he was more than happy to agree. He quickly brought Amy back to his villa. The place had full surveillance ensuring her safety, and it was located by a remote lakeside, where no one would disturb them. Amy no longer had to worry about making a living and began living a life of luxury. But her ex-boyfriend's obsessive control quickly became suffocating again. Amy spent her days watching news about her husband, hoping the case would take a turn. Because of the complete chain of evidence, Nick was almost confirmed to be the murderer. He knew that only finding his wife could clear his name. So he appeared on a television show and made a heartfelt public apology on camera. Seeing his sincere expression, Amy felt like she had rediscovered the secret to true love. Her eyes lit up and she became more determined than ever to return home. To escape her ex-boyfriend's control, Amy repeatedly studied the villa's surveillance system. She spent her days planning and came up with the most reasonable excuse for her disappearance. She put on the dress her ex-boyfriend had prepared and pretended to be friendly toward him, but the moment he stepped out, Amy's real performance began. She soaked the hem of her dress in red wine and ran under the surveillance camera. Facing the lens, she tried hard to create the illusion that she had been assaulted. She tied her wrists with rope to fake signs of long-term abuse, then injured herself with a wine bottle to make it look like he had mistreated her. When her ex came back, she eagerly invited him to bed. The man didn't suspect anything. But just then, Amy reached under the pillow and pulled out a knife, slashing his throat in an instant. Finally free, she drove back home in his car. Covered in blood, she caused a major stir. Nick had no idea what had happened, but Amy calmly walked up and hugged him. In front of all the reporters, they acted like a loving couple. When questioned by police, Amy claimed she had been kidnapped and spent over a month suffering her ex-boyfriend's abuse. She said she had to pretend to give in just to find a chance to kill him and escape. The staged surveillance footage was enough to make her story believable. The couple returned home in glory, hailed by the media as a loving pair. Amy was portrayed as a brave young woman who outsmarted a criminal. But Nick knew everything was a lie. Living in fear every day, he couldn't take it anymore and decided to expose the truth. However, as long as there were shared interests, Amy remained calm. Together, they made money from their rising fame. Even Nick's sister's bar became a chain. To shut Nick up for good, Amy gave him a gift. When Nick found out Amy was pregnant, he shoved her against the wall in anger. Even for the sake of the baby, he couldn't bring himself to reveal the truth. In the end, Nick gave in and went along with Amy for the interview. Amy had him completely under control and smiled in satisfaction. Nick gently stroked her head, wondering what schemes were still hiding inside. They looked like a loving couple on the outside, but behind the scenes, their life was full of manipulation and helplessness. Make sure to subscribe and give a like. Thanks for watching.